As that divine void covered every corner of the king's treasury, the ground beneath everyone's feet suddenly began to shake violently. In the sky, the puppet hero king held the scepter in one hand, while his other hand grasped at something invisible in the air, as if seizing some unseen authority, and suddenly clenched it tight. Boom! An explosive roar erupted in the sky. Lin Chia felt a jolt in his chest as a box suddenly broke through his collar and flew rapidly toward the puppet hero king in the sky. The crystal ball? Lin Chia tried to grab the box, but it moved too fast, instantly slipping from his grasp. This box contained the divine artifact crystal ball that the old city lord of Wu City had given him not long ago. Now, following the puppet hero king's movements, it seemed to receive some kind of guidance and shot through the air. Not just this crystal ball, but one stream of light after another rose from the ruins of Wu City and the desert, soaring into the sky. It's the thunder-suppressing hammer. I saw the thunder-suppressing hammer. Pi bracelet. Wind Granny's bell flew away too. The divine artifacts. All the divine artifacts are flying away. What's happening? The survivors standing on the city wall cried out in shock. The divine artifacts that the residents of Wu City had guarded and maintained for generations flew up from the ruins one after another. From the rolling sands of the desert, numerous black dots rapidly approached. Lin Chia narrowed his eyes and could even see the wine god's pot-winged boots as well as that long spear and silver bird. All the divine artifacts stored in the king's treasury were actively flying toward the puppet hero king in the sky. Under the control of the moon god Nana, the puppet hero king activated the king principle, reawakening this king's treasury that had slumbered for thousands of years. The numerous divine artifacts flew to the clouds, hovering behind the puppet hero king, gradually interweaving into a dazzling wall of divine artifacts. The magnificent divine radiance illuminated the dark sky with brilliant splendor. At the same time, everyone felt their bodies sink as the black city wall beneath their feet also rose from the ground, carrying them skyward. The survivors, losing their balance, fell from the city wall one after another amid terrified screams, plummeting from the heights. Seeing this, Lin Chia actively jumped down from the wall and recited loudly. The great rock rises with the wind in a day, soaring straight up 90,000 miles. Howling whirlwinds lifted everyone's bodies and placed them steadily on the ground. The terrified residents, faces pale, only then discovered that a stranger had been hiding near them all along. Lin Chia had no time to say more to these residents before his expression suddenly tightened. His hand gripping the king's star coin suddenly exerted force, firmly locking it in his palm, but the terrifying power transmitted from the star coin almost carried his entire body flying into the sky. The absolute submission property of the king's treasury could forcibly control all divine artifacts contained within it. Even the other 4 supreme-level artifacts were no exception. This won't work. If this continues, he'll also fall into the puppet hero king's hands. A gleam flashed in Lin Chia's eyes, and after a moment he actively released the star coin from his hand. The star coin transformed into a stream of light, cutting through the sky, and returned to the vicinity of the puppet hero king, surrounding him like stars around the moon along with the sword, holy grail, and scepter. Without the protection of the city wall, the forms of the survivors and Lin Chia were completely exposed in the ruins. The 3 gods in the sky looked down at them. Nana spoke indifferently. There are still fish that slipped through the net. Offer them all as sacrifices to the Holy Grail. The goddess of love and war, Inanna, nodded and with a flash, appeared above the ruins of Wu City. She coldly looked down at the dozen or so figures below her feet, stepped forward in midair and slowly raised the spear in her hand. Great god of love and beauty. Among the terrified survivors, a woman frantically pushed through the crowd, looked up at that divine figure and said in an almost pleading voice, "Spare us. You've already killed so many people, isn't that enough? Please, for the sake of our king, spare us." "Your king?" Inanna said with some amusement. "You mean Gilgamesh? You don't still think we're really gods under his command, do you? As for sparing you, even your king has become a puppet at our disposal, so what are you mortals worth? Without Gilgamesh, Uruk is nothing but a disorganized mob. Being sacrifices to restore the glory of Sumer is an honor for you mortals." Inanna's voice was like thunder, rumbling in the ears of the Wu City residents. She raised her spear and a surging divine might poured down. These ordinary people had no means to resist under the pressure of a major deity. They felt as if mountains suddenly pressed down on their shoulders, forcibly pressing them to the ground. They were forced to kneel in the ruins, large beads of sweat sliding down their cheeks, their eyes filled with fear and despair. Tali's forehead was pressed hard against the sharp corner of a broken stone slab. The sharp stone pierced her skin and blood flowed along the corner of her forehead, reddening the ground beneath her feet. She gritted her teeth, using all her strength to try to stand up, but her body felt as if it were filled with lead, not moving an inch. She whimpered, tears mixing with blood, seeping through the broken stone slabs, flowing toward the cracks below. She didn't understand what they had done wrong. They had only lived in this Wu city for generations according to their ancestors' instructions, maintaining and caring for these divine artifacts. They had never offended anyone, yet calamities came one after another. Her father was dead, the city lord and other uncles were also dead. Invaders coveted their divine artifacts. The three gods they had always believed in treated them as sacrifices. The hero king they had sworn for generations to protect was made into a puppet, and even the divine artifacts they had guarded for generations had fallen into the hands of the gods. In the face of calamity, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, and anyone seemed able to easily take their lives. No one stood on their side. Tali's tears of grievance continued to flow as she slowly closed her eyes, preparing to meet her own death. Just then, from the corner of her eye, she saw a fire-blackened seal lying quietly in the ruins beside her. It was a wedge seal, the wedge seal of Uruk. Every household in Wu City had such a seal hanging. This was a symbol and also a legacy. Their ancestors had passed down this kind of wedge seal to remind future generations that they were descendants of the kingdom of Uruk, that Uruk's blood flowed in their veins. Wu City would forever be a city of Uruk. Seeing everyone kneeling before her like ants, Inanna's lips curled slightly upward. That's right, better to kneel to me than to your hero king. Hearing these words, Tali, who had been staring blankly at the wedge seal, felt her heart tremble. Her nearly exhausted body began to shake uncontrollably, and an unprecedented belief surged in her heart, her eyes bursting with amazing willpower. She lay flat on the ground, exerting force to the side like a turtle struggling to roll over on the ground. Her previously kneeling body actually rolled onto her back. She stretched out a hand, firmly grasping the wedge seal beside her, those stubborn eyes fixed on Inanna above, a smile curling her pale lips. She didn't speak, but that gaze seemed to say, "Look, I'm not kneeling to you. I know I will die, I know I can't resist you, but so what? Even if I have to roll on the ground, I absolutely will not kneel to you." Seeing Tali's actions from the corner of their eyes, the old people who were also kneeling on the ground began to slowly imitate her. Their hunched bodies rolled awkwardly half a turn on the ground, like dying fish turning over, facing Inanna in the sky. This was a silent defiance and also a silent perseverance. Under the surging divine might in the desolate and lonely city, a group of abandoned children, pitiful yet admirable, guarded the last faint embers of Uruk's fire. Divine Asylum. In the earth-shattering clash of divine power, two figures were sent flying backward. Sun Wukong steadied himself from the muddy ground, wiped away a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth, and looked up at the void above his head. Sun Wukong treatment progress 98%. Just a little more. Sun Wukong frowned. Kill. The blood-covered Gilgamesh roared, his form darting forward like lightning, his expression utterly deranged. Sun Wukong gripped his golden cudgel, his tattered kasaya fluttering wildly in the wind, once again colliding with that gray figure. Boom. 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 The violent collisions grew increasingly fierce like waves, and the golden circle surrounding the courtyard gradually shattered from the battle's shockwaves. With a crisp sound, it completely disappeared. The battlefield, previously obscured by divine power, returned to the view of the many attendants of the asylum. The sudden explosive sounds of battle startled the busy attendants. Divine power, almost solidified into substance, howled through every corner of the asylum, pressing some of the weaker attendants to the ground. What's happening? Is it the end of the world? Li Yifei, who was supervising in the kitchen, exclaimed in shock. He quickly ran to the corridor and saw the two figures who had already obliterated the courtyard, his mouth hanging open in astonishment. Damn it! This is trouble. Li Yifei came to his senses and immediately shouted at the top of his lungs. All attendants! Drop whatever you're doing immediately. Higher level attendants, take the lower level ones with you. Gather at the large iron gate at the edge of the asylum. You must avoid the courtyard area no one can approach. I repeat, all attendants. At Li Yifei's call, the attendants began to move, gathering in small groups and carefully making their way toward the iron gate. In the collision of the two divine powers, the golden staff shadow suddenly expanded, growing to the size of a mountain, reducing Gilgamesh and a recently evacuated attendant dormitory to dust. They're mad, they're both mad. Bragi stood in the corridor at the edge of the courtyard, his mouth agape at the apocalyptic battlefield. They're going to demolish everything. You've done well, child. A gentle voice came from behind him. This sudden voice made Bragi jump. He turned around quickly and seeing the kindly face of Erland, he let out a long breath. Old man, what are you still doing here? These two are clearly going all out. Staying here will only get you caught in the crossfire. Bragi grabbed Erland's arm and quickly walked away from the battlefield. But Erland seemed rooted to the ground. No matter how hard Bragi pulled, he didn't move an inch. Hey, are you really not leaving? Bragi frowned. You've done well, child. It's dangerous here. You've done well, child. Another madman, another one. I'm clearly the only sane person in this asylum. Bragi cursed. Boom. Another building was crushed by divine power. Gilgamesh crashed to the ground like a cannonball, his clothes stained red with blood. Just as he was about to rise, Sun Wukong landed on top of him, stepping on his chest. The ground cracked like a spiderweb. Sun Wukong treatment progress. 99%. The progress bar in the void jumped forward another small notch. Divine power exhausted, the dust gradually settled. The badly wounded Gilgamesh finally calmed down. Those bloodshot eyes stared blankly upward, as a memory not his own flashed rapidly through his mind. It was the chaotic memory implanted in his mind by the moon goddess Nana. As the physical body of Gilgamesh in the outside world revived, this memory overlapped with Gilgamesh in the asylum. In a daze, he read the cause and effect from his physical body's memory. This is, he murmured. Awake. Sun Wukong released his foot, stepped back and asked in a deep voice. Gilgamesh didn't answer. He was still processing the information in his mind. After a long time he came back to his senses, anger appearing on his pale face. Sumerian. Nana. The situation outside is quite bad, Sun Wukong said calmly. I need to go. Hearing these words, Gilgamesh's expression shifted slightly. He looked at Sun Wukong for a moment, then silently took out a broken wedge seal from his pocket. It was what Lin Chia had received from Merlin and returned to him when he first left his ward. Gilgamesh looked at the broken wedge seal in his hand and slowly said, Monkey, no Sun Wukong. I want to ask you a favor. Sun Wukong raised an eyebrow. This was the first time he had heard the word please from Gilgamesh's mouth. Speak. Gilgamesh opened his mouth and solemnly said something. Sun Wukong pondered for a moment then nodded, I understand. Gilgamesh struggled to stand up, placed the broken wedge seal in Sun Wukong's palm, and looked at him with complex emotions. The me who controls the treasury is very strong. Be careful. Sun Wukong glanced at him and said flatly, I can beat you here and outside. I won't lose either. He reached out, grabbed the last corner of his kasaya and gently pulled it off completely. Sun Wukong treatment progress. 100%. Great Sage equaling Heaven. Sun Wukong's treatment complete. Please leave the asylum immediately. Reward conditions met, beginning random selection of Sun Wukong's divine abilities. Several messages floated above Sun Wukong's head. His eyes narrowed as he stomped his right foot on the ground. A series of phantom images formed around him. He wore a phoenix-winged golden crown and golden chain armor, with a golden-red battle robe resembling a kasaya fluttering in the wind. Battle intent mixed with wild divine power surged through the asylum. Those golden burning eyes flashed with defiant sharpness. Compared to the desolate depth when he first left his ward, he was now a completely different person. When he tore off that last corner of the Kasaya, he was no longer the Buddha's victorious fighting Buddha of the Western heaven bound by Buddhist robes. Now he was the great sage equaling heaven of great Xia. Clay. As golden divine power surged, a ferocious rift appeared before him. I couldn't beat you here because you recovered faster than me, Gilgamesh suddenly said. Looking at Sun Wukong's back, he continued. When I recover and leave the asylum, let's have another match outside. Sun Wukong turned his head, looked at him and nodded. Good, I'll be waiting. With those words, Sun Wukong, holding his golden cudgel, stepped into the rift. His figure completely disappeared from the divine asylum. Outside world. Inanna looked at the Crow City residents below who were continuously turning over, anger climbing in her eyes. A bunch of mortals truly seeking death. She raised the spear in her hand and threw it forcefully. Terrifying divine power surged around the spear tip, like a world-ending meteorite crashing down toward the ant-like crowd. Feeling the suffocating pressure coming toward her, the immobilized Tali still had a trace of a smile at the corner of her mouth. Although the end result was death either way, seeing a deity's angry embarrassment wasn't so bad, was it? Gods were just like this after all. She slowly closed her eyes. At that moment, a dazzling golden light pierced through space, instantly carving a ferocious rift in midair. From within the wildly surging divine power, an ancient ape figure holding a golden red staff and wearing a golden red battle robe stepped out. Who did you say is seeking death? Monkey brother. Lin Chie stared at the towering golden figure, muttering to himself. He had witnessed everything that happened in the divine mental hospital. Sun Wukong could advance his treatment progress through battle, and this time he deliberately engaged with Gilgamesh in combat to push his treatment progress to 100%, leave the hospital and help him and Gilgamesh out of their predicament. At the same time, Sun Wukong was also the patient who had been discharged the fastest so far. A great Xia deity? Sensing the energy fluctuations from Sun Wukong, Inanna and the two Sumerian deities in the sky exclaimed in shock simultaneously. How is this possible? How could a great Xia deity suddenly appear inside this treasury? How did he get in? Inanna had no time to think further. Feeling the violent energy so close to her, her hair stood on end as an ominous premonition rose in her heart, and she quickly retreated. But she was still a step too slow. Sun Wukong didn't hesitate at all. Divine might erupted from his eyes as wild sand danced in the turbulence. He gripped his golden cudgel with both hands, raised it high above his head, and smashed it down. As divine power poured into it, the golden cudgel flowing with golden light visibly expanded, transforming into a massive pillar that reached the sky. Its enormous shadow instantly enveloped Inanna's rapidly retreating figure. Inanna's pupils contracted sharply. Boom! The world-destroying golden cudgel crashed down, sending countless grains of sand flying into the air as the earth rumbled. The sweeping gale blew away the survivors lying in the ruins. They flailed their arms in terror as they were thrown into the air, but a touch of night color stained their collars, catching their bodies in midair and gently placing them on the ground. While rescuing the last residents of Wu City, Lin Chia watched the figure in the dust cloud, feeling deeply moved. The great sage was truly worthy of his title. Just the vast ocean-like divine power alone was incomparable to ordinary major deities. After the single strike, the sky-reaching pillar rapidly shrank back into a golden red staff in Sun Wukong's hand as he floated down from the sky to stand on the ruined earth. From the rolling dust, Inanna's disheveled figure emerged. She clutched her twisted and deformed left arm, barely standing in the devastated crater, her white robe in tatters. Why would a great Xia deity appear here? Inanna glared at Sun Wukong and shouted angrily, "Who are you?" Sun Wukong rested the golden cudgel on his shoulder, walking out from the dust cloud, his burning golden eyes glancing at her indifferently. Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong. Inanna frowned, seeming to find the name somewhat familiar. Sun Wukong ignored Inanna and the moon god Nana and fire god Jibble in the sky, his gaze falling directly on the puppet hero king in the center of the divine weapons filling the sky, who stood expressionless and soulless. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why did you save us?" Behind Sun Wukong, Tali, who had escaped death, asked timidly. Sun Wukong glanced at her and spoke calmly. "It was Gil. It was your king who asked me to save you." Our king. Everyone was stunned. But didn't our king die? He's not dead. Sun Wukong paused for a moment. He will return. In the sky, Nana and Jibble, who had witnessed Sun Wukong's actions firsthand, had extremely grim expressions. Where did this great Xia deity come from? Jibble asked in confusion. Nana remained silent for a moment, his aged eyes narrowing into a dangerous arc. It doesn't matter. Since he has appeared inside the treasury, we absolutely cannot let him leave. He's alone. We'll kill him and use him as a sacrifice for the Holy Grail. With a lift of Nana's fingertip, the puppet hero king below transformed into a streak of light, howling as it flew towards Sun Wukong. The divine weapons in the sky seemed to receive some kind of guidance, adorning the space above like stars, resembling countless swords of Damocles ready to fall at any moment. Bring it on. Sun Wukong stomped the ground forcefully, his figure shooting up into the clouds like lightning, engaging in battle with the puppet hero king who wore royal robes and a crown. Just as he raised the golden cudgel in his hand, the puppet hero king lifted his palm and made a grasping motion toward the sky. The king's treasury trembled once more. Sun Wukong felt his hand lighten as the golden cudgel automatically flew out of his palm, transforming into a rainbow of light that shot up into the sky, joining the numerous divine weapons suspended above. It must be understood that this was the interior of the king's treasury. And the king's treasury possessed an absolute submission attribute over divine weapons that entered its interior. Even Sun Wukong's golden cudgel couldn't escape this rule, forcibly severing its connection with him and being completely contained. With empty hands, Sun Wukong's expression immediately became solemn. He finally understood what Gilgamesh had meant by his warning before leaving. Gilgamesh wielding the king's treasury was completely different from the Gilgamesh in the hospital. Having lost his golden cudgel, Sun Wukong didn't panic. He calmly looked up at the puppet hero king as his gold and red battle robe fluttered without wind. Divine power erupted around him as he parted his lips and said, "Heaven and earth transformation." As the words fell, the weather changed dramatically. The already dim sky rapidly plunged into darkness. Yellow sand mixed with fierce winds swirling everywhere. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed toward that golden figure at an alarming speed. A suffocating pressure suddenly enveloped everyone's hearts. From the constantly rotating vortex of spiritual energy, a colossal figure that reached from earth to sky broke through the yellow sand and slowly stood up. It was a figure completely shrouded in swirling demonic energy, wearing a phoenix-winged purple gold crown and a golden chain armor. Standing on the yellow sand, its head nearly disappeared into the clouds, with only those burning golden eyes piercingly bright, looking down at the three deities and the puppet hero king below. What an enormous divine manifestation! Lin Chia couldn't help but exclaim at this sight. His own equal to heaven manifestation originated from Sun Wukong's divine ability, but compared to this, it was like a child next to a strong man. The difference in both aura and size was too great. The equal to heaven manifestation raised its giant hand, slowly pressing down toward the puppet hero king, blocking out the sun and sky, like a piece of the heavens falling. Before the hand even landed, the terrifying air pressure had already squeezed a palm print into the desert. Violent divine power surged toward the puppet hero king's face, yet those dull eyes continued to stare blankly at the void before him. Just as the hand was about to touch him, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded. King's law, divine void forbidden. An invisible domain expanded, enveloping both the giant hand and the enormous equal to heaven manifestation. Boom! That world-destroying giant palm suddenly halted 10 meters in front of the puppet hero king, as if an invisible wall firmly blocked the divine manifestation. The puppet hero king took a step forward in midair. The moment this step was taken, the arm of the heavenly sage's manifestation began to rapidly dissipate. It was as if some law was reversing Sun Wukong's divine transformation, causing his form condensed from spiritual energy to quickly recede. Within the divine manifestation, Sun Wukong seemed to have foreseen this scene. His lips parted slightly and an obscure Buddhist chant emerged from his mouth, low and resonant like an ancient bell. Visible golden sound waves collided with the puppet hero king's invisible divine void, creating howling gusts of wind. The puppet hero king was forced to take half a step back, while the heavenly sage's manifestation halted its dissipation. The incomplete half-fist smashed directly into the puppet hero king's face. The figure in royal robes was hammered to the ground like a meteor. He knows how to counter Gilgamesh's end of King's Law? Fire god Biji exclaimed in shock. Moon god Nana furrowed his brow as he stared at Sun Wukong's figure within the divine manifestation, equally confused. Logically, Gilgamesh had died of old age thousands of years ago, and since then his corpse had been preserved in Nana's moonlight pool. This great Xia god shouldn't have had any opportunity to face Gilgamesh in battle. But why did he seem to know Gilgamesh so well? Whether it was attack style or the weaknesses in his divine void, he seemed to understand everything perfectly. The three Sumerian gods had no idea that 100 years ago during the descent of the mist, the last thread of Gilgamesh's soul suspended in his corpse had been contained by the psychiatric hospital for gods. They were even less aware that during this period, Sun Wukong had already fought Gilgamesh hundreds or even thousands of times. Through these countless battles, Sun Wukong had thoroughly mastered Gilgamesh's fighting habits. Even the battle instincts remaining in this corpse were completely familiar to him. Sometimes your enemy knows you better than you know yourself. Let alone this puppet hero king controlled by Nana. Even if Gilgamesh himself were to be resurrected, his chances against Sun Wukong would be no better than 50-50. The puppet hero king slowly rose from the ruins, and that massive divine manifestation struck again with fist-like raindrops, completely submerging him in a sea of yellow sand. Hideous cracks spread across the ground. At that moment, the numerous divine weapons suspended high in the sky suddenly shook, and 5 or 6 of them fell like meteors, targeting the heavenly sage's manifestation. A black hammer wreathed in lightning, a completely red spear, a silver flying bird. Even among them was the golden cudgel that had just flown from Sun Wukong's hand. Countless divine weapons crashed into the back of the heavenly sage's manifestation with a thunderous boom. Brilliant divine light burst forth continuously, nearly engulfing the entire sky. Under the siege of these lesser god, or even major god-level divine weapons, the divine manifestation was instantly riddled with holes, its condensed spiritual energy visibly dissipating. Sun Wukong's figure flew out from within the divine manifestation, with 4 or 5 divine weapons closely following behind him, rapidly closing the distance. Sun Wukong reached behind his head and plucked several monkey hairs, blowing them gently. Dozens of Sun Wukongs, each wearing the same phoenix-winged golden crown and golden chain mail, flew in different directions, swarming toward the puppet hero king on the ground. For a moment, those divine weapons didn't know which one to track. Shortly after, they split up to quickly hunt down the Sun Wukongs. As one by one the clones dissipated into monkey hairs, more than 10 figures had almost reached the puppet hero king. The puppet hero king raised his hand, and that scepter, hovering in the air, trembled slightly as if guided by some force, quickly falling from among the divine weapons, cutting through the sky and landing in his hand. "Brother monkey, be careful. It will steal your divine power." Seeing this, Lin Chia's expression changed and he immediately shouted. The myriad Sun Wukongs narrowed their eyes, advancing rather than retreating. More than 10 golden-red battle robes fiercely swept toward the puppet hero king from different angles. Clay. The scepter hit the ground and golden ripples quickly spread out. All the Sun Wukongs swept by the golden ripples turned back into monkey hairs floating in the air, with only one figure being the exception. Divine power transformed into a golden torrent, pouring out from Sun Wukong's true body, flowing directly toward the scepter, in the puppet hero king's hand. Having lost his divine power, Sun Wukong's steps faltered, but then he stomped the ground forcefully, flying forward with even greater speed. Sun Wukong was no ordinary god. He was the great sage equal to heaven who had cultivated step by step from demon to achieve enlightenment. Even without divine power, that body tempered by the Samadhi true fire still possessed terrifying combat ability. Sun Wukong left a trail of afterimages in the air, actually outpacing the torrent of divine power returning to the scepter. Appearing before the puppet hero king almost as if teleporting, his left hand pressed down on the scepter, while his right fist clenched tightly, whistling as it smashed toward the king's face. With a muffled sound, his fist struck the puppet hero king's forehead forcefully. Under the impact of the surging power, the brain filled with moonlight instantly cracked into countless fissures. The puppet hero king's body flew backward from the impact. Sun Wukong's punch directly shattered the brain of Gilgamesh's corpse, also shattering the moonlight Nana used to control this body with his subconscious. This is bad, Nana's face darkened. With the brain shattered, we can't activate Gilgamesh's battle instincts. If we can only control the physical body, the combat power will be greatly reduced. Where did this monkey come from and how is he so formidable? Witnessing Sun Wukong break through the encirclement and punch the puppet hero king flying, Lin Chia's face lit up with joy. At that moment, as if sensing something, he sank his consciousness into the psychiatric hospital for gods. Psychiatric hospital for gods. The instant Sun Wukong shattered the puppet hero king's brain in the outside world, Gilgamesh, who had been lying unconscious, suddenly opened his eyes. As the brain shattered and the moonlight dissipated, the illusory memories that had been affecting Gilgamesh finally disappeared completely, and an unprecedented sense of relief washed over him. Gilgamesh treatment progress: 42%, 48%, 53%, 59%. As soon as Lin Chia entered the psychiatric hospital for gods, he saw the progress bar above Gilgamesh's head rapidly increasing. Sun Wukong's punch had essentially shattered the root of Gilgamesh's illness, causing his treatment progress to surge from the original 37% all the way to 59%, breaking past the 50% threshold in one go. At the same time, several messages floated before his eyes. Reward extraction conditions met. Can collect Gilgamesh's divine ability again. Gilgamesh's treatment progress has exceeded 50%. He can leave the psychiatric hospital for gods for short-term activity. In the courtyard, Gilgamesh, who had been lying on the ground like a corpse, slowly stood up, dusting off the dirt from his gray robe and exhaling all the pent-up frustration in his chest. He walked straight to Lin Chia and said firmly, "Lin Chia, I want to go out." "Going out now?" Lin Chia was startled and reminded him, "Your illness hasn't been completely cured. Even if you go out, you'll only be in soul form and unable to fight. This king knows, but if I cannot protect my own people, how can I be worthy of being called a king?" Gilgamesh paused for a moment, turned his head, and looked at the lonely black throne in the courtyard. A lonely king with only a throne left. This king has had enough of that. Seeing this, Lin Chia no longer tried to stop him. He grabbed the hem of Gilgamesh's clothes as his consciousness gradually returned to the outside world. Sun Wukong steadied himself in the yellow sand and looked at the figure gradually standing up in the distance, his brows slightly furrowed. Although his previous punch had shattered the puppet hero king's brain, for a puppet controlled by moonlight, it was impossible to completely disable it. As the puppet hero king shakily stood up from the ruins, that scepter that carried Sun Wukong's divine power fell back into its palm. The surging divine power poured into the puppet hero king's body, causing its divine power to rise at an alarming rate. He's doomed. Inanna, who had flown back to the sky with severe injuries, saw this scene and a grim smile appeared on her face. Gilgamesh has used the scepter to steal his divine power and enhance himself, equivalent to possessing double the divine power of a main god. Even if there's some inconvenience in control, it's enough to crush that monkey. With the three of us added, no matter how great that monkey's abilities are, he can't possibly cause any trouble. He was too arrogant, Nana said calmly. If he hadn't risked his life for that punch earlier and instead avoided the scepter's range with his strength, he might have actually broken through our encirclement and left this place. A beast is just a beast, only knowing how to fight recklessly. Are all the gods of Great Xia this stupid? Bijal sneered. On the battlefield where yellow sand danced in the air, the puppet hero king stepped on waves of divine power that had almost solidified, holding the scepter, his royal robe fluttering in the wind as he slowly walked toward Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong, who had lost his divine power, showed no trace of panic. He slightly turned his head to look not far behind him. "What you asked for, I've done it. Now it's up to you," he muttered to himself. Lin Chia's eyes slowly opened. In the void beside him, a figure wearing a gray robe took shape. Though covered in wounds, his eyes were as bright as stars. Gilgamesh swept his gaze across the surroundings, seeing the dilapidated ruins everywhere, anger uncontrollably surfacing in the depths of his eyes. Just then a voice came from behind. "Don't cry, we're not dead yet, are we?" Hearing the familiar language, Gilgamesh's body trembled as he turned to look. Among a pile of ruins, a group of elderly, weak and young figures were huddled behind a broken wall, their faces extremely pale. A small boy was sitting in the corner, continuously sobbing, his whimpering tugging at everyone's heartstrings. They lowered their heads, their eyes full of despair, the atmosphere gloomy and heavy. A slightly older girl was stroking his back, comforting him softly. "Our king has sent a god to help us. He's so powerful he injured Inanna with just one strike. He will definitely protect us." "You're lying." The boy pointed to the distance. "You saw it too, the scepter drained his divine power. He can't defeat the three gods. And our king is already dead, his body is in the hands of the three gods. How could he possibly send a god to save us? That's just a lie." Tali opened her mouth, wanting to say more to persuade him, but couldn't find the words. "Those are the descendants of your people." Lin Chia looked at them and explained to Gilgamesh. "Don't you want to go see them?" Gilgamesh stared at those figures, his eyes filled with complexity. After a moment of silence, he shook his head. "Now? I can't." "Why?" "As I am now, I'm not worthy to be their king." Gilgamesh looked at the battlefield. "Is the star coin here?" "Yes." Lin Chia nodded, a brilliant magical light blooming in his palm as he summoned the king's star coin that had been hanging in the sky to his hand. Although he couldn't prevent the puppet hero king from taking the star coin, he had left a summoning mark on its surface beforehand, allowing him to take it away at any time if the puppet hero king wasn't paying attention. Gilgamesh reached out to take it. "What exactly is the function of this star coin?" Lin Chia asked puzzledly. "Can it materialize things you imagine?" Gilgamesh raised an eyebrow. "You've used it?" "Yes." Gilgamesh looked at him and explained, "The function of this star coin is not to materialize imagination. Its true ability is memory manifestation." Memory manifestation? Under normal circumstances, the star coin constantly rotates clockwise, but when its rotation direction is changed, it will manifest the memories that the holder recalls, Gilgamesh calmly explained. The manifested memories will completely retain all the characteristics of the past. Moreover, the deeper the holder's impression of that memory, the longer it will manifest. If the impression of the memory is vague, it might only appear for an instant. And this manifestation is not limited to objects. People are also included. "People too?" Lin Chia exclaimed in surprise. "So it can summon people who existed in memories back again?" "Correct, that's the most terrifying aspect of the star coin." Gilgamesh paused. "Of course, its side effects are also enormous. Such as misfortune? It seems you've already experienced it." Gilgamesh glanced at Lin Chia, confirming he wasn't missing any limbs before continuing. "One of the side effects of the star coin is that within half an hour after the counterclockwise rotation ends, the holder will suffer an extremely terrifying backlash of misfortune. This backlash ignores realm boundaries. Whether you're an ordinary person without any strength or a supremely powerful main god, the backlash is enough to destroy them. For ordinary people, it might be getting killed by a falling vase when going out or falling into a river and drowning. For gods, it might be being struck dead by lightning, being accidentally injured by a divine artifact, or suddenly finding themselves in the midst of a battle between several gods and being killed in the encirclement. When I first obtained the star coin, I experimented with some captives. Some manifested wealth they once had, some manifested their deceased mothers, some manifested their younger selves. But after the star coin finished its rotation, out of 10 people, only one ultimately survived. The fact that you're alive and well after using the star coin indicates that your destiny is truly extraordinary. Hearing Gilgamesh's description, Lin Chia was filled with fear. Thinking carefully, his survival from the side effects of star coin was indeed due to luck, and a great stroke of luck at that, the Divine Mental Hospital. If not for this hospital and for Sun Wukong, who happened to be able to leave, even if he had survived the lightning strike in quicksand earlier, just the final instance of getting lost and being sent back to the feet of the three gods would have been enough to cost him his life. You said misfortune is just one of the side effects. What are the other side effects? Lin Chia asked in confusion. Gilgamesh stared at him for a moment. Let me ask you, after using star coin, what did you recreate? Lin Chia was stunned and naturally began to speak. first I recreated, no, I recreated, what? Lin Chia's expression gradually became confused, until finally, only bewilderment remained on his face. I don't remember? Lin Chia clearly remembered that he not only escaped from the hands of the fire god Bijil, but even managed to wound him. But how exactly did he accomplish this? What exactly had he recreated that could wound a deity? Lin Chia racked his brains, but this piece of memory was like a blank space. No matter how hard he tried to recall, he couldn't remember a single detail. Seeing this, Gilgamesh wasn't surprised and continued. Another side effect of star coin is forgetting. When an object or person is recreated from memory by star coin, all memories related to it will be erased from the user. That's also why star coin can only recreate memories once. Forgetting, Lin Chia murmured. What about you? What memory do you want to recreate with star coin? Gilgamesh held star coin in his palm, his gaze fixed on the puppet hero king in the distance, and calmly said, "This king is now just a soul without fighting power and unable to control this treasury. To break this deadlock, another Gilgamesh must appear." The hero king. Gilgamesh positioned star coin on his fingertip and flicked it hard. Ding. With a crisp sound, star coin flew high from his palm, falling into the ruins, and quickly began spinning counterclockwise. Pale blue light reflected from the coin's surface, illuminating Gilgamesh's face. Countless memories surged, and vaguely, a figure slowly emerged from his recollections. Another Gilgamesh? Lin Chia was stunned for a moment, then exclaimed as if realizing something. "You want to recreate your past self?" Gilgamesh didn't speak. He just gazed at the continuously spinning star coin, and slowly closed his eyes. A gust of wind arose from nowhere, blowing dust and debris into the sky. A terrifying divine presence, extremely oppressive, suddenly exploded from the void in front of star coin. A tall, majestic figure gradually took shape in the pale blue light. A young emperor with a solemn and dignified face slowly walked out from the ruins. He stood tall and proud, brilliant golden light radiating from his flawless crown, a magnificent gray-gold royal robe swaying in the howling wind, emanating a heart-pounding tyrannical intent. His face was almost identical to Gilgamesh in the hospital, with the only difference being that this face seemed younger, and the light in his eyes was sharp and fierce, like a supreme dagger that had killed countless people, instilling fear in anyone who dared to look. He was also Gilgamesh. He was the hero king from the kingdom of Uruk countless ages ago. At the peak of his power, the spirit form Gilgamesh, seeing that familiar royal figure, showed nostalgia in his eyes. The hero king who emerged from memory first looked around, confusion appearing in his eyes, then seemed to realize something. "It's star coin? Who used star coin to summon this king from memory?" "It was this king." Gilgamesh's voice came from behind. The hero king turned to look. On the ruins of Uruk city, the tattered gray robe and the magnificent royal robe swayed in the wind. The hero kings of past and present stood facing each other across time. "My future self." The hero king examined the spirit-only Gilgamesh before him, his brows tightly furrowed. "Gilgamesh, you look too wretched." "No matter how wretched I am, still you," Gilgamesh calmly replied. "If not for these special circumstances, would this king have used star coin to recreate you?" The hero king silently observed him for a moment, glancing at the counterclockwise spinning star coin nearby. "This king can only maintain this form for a short time. Be quick." Gilgamesh stepped forward, his soul gradually overlapping with the hero king. As the tattered gray robe and the gray-gold royal robe completely merged, those deep eyes suddenly blazed with brilliant purple light. A purple pillar of divine power shot into the sky. The king flaw. The three gods in the sky felt that purple aura instantly, their pupils contracting as they turned sharply toward Gilgamesh's direction, their faces filled with shock. "Isn't Gilgamesh in our hands? Why is there a second King Law?" "Gilgamesh. It's the young Gilgamesh. How is this possible?" Meanwhile, Sun Wukong, who was fighting the puppet hero king with his physical strength, looked back, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "Now that's what a king should look like," he murmured. As the purple light column continued to ripple outward, a purple gold figure wearing a royal robe and crown walked out from the dust clouds. Hero King Gilgamesh looked up at the shocked three gods in the sky and calmly said, "Three sneaking rats, dare to use this king's treasury?" He raised his hand toward the sky as if to grasp the heavens in his palm. Final king's authority. An invisible divine domain rapidly expanded, overlapping with the puppet hero king's domain, instantly covering the entire king's treasury. The numerous divine weapons suspended high in the sky began to tremble and shake, falling one after another from the heavens, like a meteor shower, flying toward that gray-gold royal robe. "He's fighting us for control of the king's treasury." Vigil's face turned extremely ugly. "If he wants to fight for it, we'll fight back." The moonlight around Nana nearly boiled, and that aged face showed a ruthless intent. "He has the king law, but so do we. I don't believe that he alone can overpower the three of us." In the vast desert, the puppet hero king seemed to receive some guidance and likewise extended his hand, grasping toward the sky. Two streams of king's law simultaneously extended into the king's treasury, like two purple giant pythons frantically fighting for control. A series of muffled thunderclaps came from the sky above. The earth violently trembled and countless divine artifacts seemed to be caught in some kind of vortex, beginning to rotate chaotically in the air. As time passed, the divine artifacts in the sky began to shift toward Gilgamesh at a visible speed. Whoosh! From the puppet hero king's hand that scepter suddenly flew out, was caught in the vortex of divine artifacts, and streams of golden divine power transformed into a flood, returning to Sun Wukong's body. The puppet hero king was after all just a resurrected corpse. Even though Nana spent mental energy trying to control the king's law well, compared to Gilgamesh at his prime, he was still quite inferior. In this contest of laws, the scales of victory began to tilt toward Gilgamesh. "Go disturb him," Nana said with an ugly expression. As the words fell, the fire god Bilgi and the goddess of love and war Inanna simultaneously dove toward Gilgamesh below, two terrifying waves of divine might descending upon the world again. Gilgamesh, who was focused on fighting for the king's treasury, saw this scene and his eyes narrowed slightly. At that moment, a figure wearing a gold-red battle robe crashed to the ground like a meteor. Bang! Sun Wukong stood not far in front of Gilgamesh, his burning golden eyes squinting at the two approaching figures, and spoke calmly. "Focus on your own business, those two, leave them to me." He stomped his feet hard on the ground, transformed into a golden lightning bolt, and flew straight toward those two figures. Gilgamesh watched his departing silhouette, confusion appearing in his eyes. "Who is he?" This was the hero king from the past asking. The Gilgamesh attached to this body was silent for a moment. "A friend." "Friend?" The hero king was startled. "You still have." "Stop wasting words." Gilgamesh interrupted the hero king's speech. "See that golden red staff among the divine artifacts? Get it first." "All right." Gilgamesh reached out and the golden cudgel fell from the clouds, making a turn in the air, flying straight toward Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong sensed it, reached out to grasp the golden cudgel, glanced at Gilgamesh below and chuckled. "At least you have a conscience." Sun Wukong held the golden cudgel, his gold-red battle robe fluttering in the wind, the fighting spirit in those golden eyes soaring to the sky, violent divine power surging with him at the center. A massive great sage manifestation slowly rose behind him. "It's been a long time since I killed a god." Under the dim clouds, a golden pillar collided with two streams of divine power. Crack! As the two laws continued to tear at each other, above the king's treasury, cracks appeared from nothingness and chaotic gray mist drifted down from the gaps. "If this continues, the king's treasury will be damaged," the hero king warned upon seeing this. "If it's damaged, so be it." Gilgamesh was completely unconcerned about this. This king would rather destroy it than let it fall into someone else's hands. Seeing this, the hero king stopped persuading and silently pushed the king's law to its limit. The purple light pillar swelled again by half a circle. In the distance, the puppet hero king stumbled, nearly falling to the ground, but at that moment, the moonlight flowing inside him began to surge like boiling water. In the sky, the moon god Nana's expression gradually became ferocious. "Are you crazy, Gilgamesh?" he roared. "Destroying this treasury benefits neither of us." Gilgamesh calmly replied. "It's just a treasury at worst. This king will build another one later." Boom! The moment Gilgamesh's words fell, a huge sound came from the sky. Dense cracks connected into an irregular area, rapidly collapsing from the center. In just 2 seconds, a jagged gap appeared in the sky above the king's treasury. The king's treasury had a corner shattered. The rolling mist from the outside world poured into the treasury through the gap. At the same time, the treasury's absolute control over all divine artifacts instantly failed. Dozens of divine artifacts fell from the sky like raindrops, plunging into the vast sea of sand, disappearing without a trace. The puppet hero king, suffering from the law's backlash, was instantly blown back hundreds of meters. The moonlight flowing within him was completely scattered, disappearing like tiny fireflies. Without the moonlight's control, the puppet hero king's eyes became hollow and lifeless again. His form wavered and he fell headlong into the howling sandstorm. The moon god Nana, standing in the sky, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, his face extremely pale. Damn it, damn it. In this contest of laws he ultimately lost to Gilgamesh, and the king's treasury he had worked so hard to obtain was damaged as a result. The revival plan that the 3 Sumerian gods had painstakingly schemed for 100 years finally turned to nothing. The misty fog rolled in like seawater, spreading within the king's treasury. The purple divine power around Gilgamesh receded. His gaze swept across the desert, searching among the divine artifacts on the ground for a long time, until he finally found a stone box the size of a chessboard. He picked up the stone box from the yellow sand, and with a flicker of his form, appeared before the survivors of Uruk. Seeing the face that was identical to the stone statue, the survivors were stunned for a moment, then spoke in disbelief. "It's our king, it's really our king. That monkey god wasn't lying. He really was sent by our king. Our king is still alive. Tali, descendant of Uruk, pays respects to our king. Paying respects to our king." Amid the exclamations, they came to their senses and knelt before Gilgamesh one after another. Having escaped death, they knelt on the ground, tears uncontrollably flowing from their eyes, down their cheeks and onto the ruins, trembling as they spoke. "We kneel to thank our king for saving our lives." Gilgamesh, wearing the royal robe, stood before them, his eyes extremely complex. "Rise," he said softly. The crowd took a long time to stand up with difficulty. Now Uruk is no more and the treasury is severely damaged. Ultimately, it is all this king's fault. Gilgamesh was silent for a moment. "Among you, if anyone is disappointed or dissatisfied with this king allows you to leave. Before you go, each of you may choose one divine artifact to take with you as compensation for guarding the divine artifacts for this king." Hearing these words, everyone was stunned and looked at each other. "Leave?" an old man said with a bitter smile. "Your Majesty, we have grown up in this treasury for generations, with the mission of guarding the divine artifacts. What the outside world is like, we have never heard of it, never seen it. Now asking us to leave this place, isn't that asking for our lives? Yes, we don't want to go outside. We are the people of Uruk, willing to continue following our king." Gilgamesh swept his gaze across everyone, remaining silent for a moment. "This king gave you a chance. Since you refused to leave, so be it. Now that the treasury is damaged, you cannot stay here anymore. Before this king rebuilds Uruk, you will take shelter in this Nahai box. At most 1 year, and this king will bring you out." Gilgamesh opened the stone box, and a beam of rainbow light enveloped all the survivors of Uruk city, drawing them inside. He closed the stone box and placed it in his bosom. Lin Chie stood nearby, silently watching this process. "Are you really sure about this?" Lin Chie sighed. "Since one of the side effects of Star Coin is forgetting, when it returns to rotating clockwise, you will completely forget your past self." "If I forget, then I forget," Gilgamesh calmly replied. "The so-called king of heroes disappeared when Uruk was destroyed. The glory of the past is ultimately just history. This king only needs to remember that this king is the ruler of Uruk. Sometimes forgetting is also a new beginning." He glanced at the star coin in the ruins, its rotation gradually slowing, and casually picked up a nearby red longsword artifact, walking toward the sky. Purple divine power surged around him like an ocean, parting to both sides with his steps. Beneath his gray-gold royal robe, the sword's edge flickered with a cold, grim light. He raised his head to look at the divine battlefield in the sky, softly murmuring, Sun Wukong, this king has arrived. Gilgamesh took a step forward, the purple divine power around him suddenly twisted, and his figure instantly appeared beside Sun Wukong, who was manifesting his divine form. Sun Wukong glanced at him, then returned his gaze to the battlefield before him, saying indifferently, You're late, I've already killed one. The goddess of love and war, Inanna, who had been severely wounded by Sun Wukong at the beginning, was now smashed to the ground, bloodied and mangled, her eyes unfocused, lifeless. Only the displeased fire god Bilger and the moon god Nanna remained standing nearby. Gilgamesh said nothing, he simply gripped the long sword in his hand, his gaze toward the moon god Nanna flashing with cold killing intent. Then let's see who kills faster. Sun Wukong raised an eyebrow. The fire god is mine, the moon god is yours. Good. The moment Gilgamesh's words fell, two surges of divine power swept out. A gray-gold royal robe, a gold-red battle robe, like two swords carrying endless killing intent, aimed straight at the throats of the two Sumerian deities. The earth shook and the heavens trembled. The king's treasury on the other side of the desert. Misty fog poured down from the sky, and a bloody figure was writhing like a maggot in the desert. Number 22 gritted his teeth, his eyes fixed on the gap in the treasury above, a flame of hope burning fiercely in his heart. Originally, he had been worried about how to escape from the treasury if the three gods truly controlled this place, but unexpectedly the treasury itself had cracked open and the gap was right above him. Heaven truly doesn't want me dead. Number 22 moved forward a bit, when suddenly a chill ran down his neck, and an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Without thinking, he quickly rolled sideways in the sand. The next moment, a black hammer wreathed in electric light smashed directly into the sand from high above. The dancing electric arcs brushed past number 22's cheek. If his movement had been half a second slower, he would have been smashed to a bloody pulp by the hammer. He crawled in the desert, his heart pounding wildly. A divine artifact? How could a divine artifact fall from the sky? Number 22 looked up in confusion, his eyes narrowing. In the sky above, countless divine artifacts were falling like raindrops, and one cluster was heading directly toward his surroundings. Number 22 painfully twisted his body to avoid these falling artifacts. Craters were punched into the sand by the artifacts, and flying sand obscured almost the entire sky. After several tens of seconds, all the artifacts had fallen, and number 22 barely managed to raise his head from the dune. This is, number 22 muttered, looking at the divine artifacts scattered around him. He crawled out of the dune like a madman, reached for an ancient-looking milky white heart-protecting amulet, and wore it around his neck. A gentle halo spread from the amulet, gradually repairing his severely injured body. Divine artifacts, all divine artifacts. Number 22's face showed wild joy. He grabbed a silver lock with his left hand and the king's sword stuck in a rock crevice with his right. Just as he was about to look for something else, his gaze suddenly fell on the scepter, nearby, 2/3 buried in a sand dune. Without a word, number 22 staggered a few steps and struggled to pull the scepter from the sand. Due to his severe injuries, his legs were unsteady. He stumbled and slid down the dune, rolling like a sandbag for dozens of meters. Even with one hand broken, he still used his elbow to clutch the scepter tightly to his chest as if it were his life. Finally, his battered body slowly stopped rolling in the desert. Number 22 looked down at the golden scepter and the sword in his arms, a smile appearing on his face. The smile grew wider and wider until finally he simply fell back on the sand and laughed like a madman. After laughing for a full minute as if tired from laughing, he shakily stood up from the sand. He held the scepter with one arm, used the silver lock to secure the sword on his back, and scanned the other divine artifacts nearby, greed appearing in his eyes. But soon he shook his head and the greed was suppressed by rationality. In his current state he couldn't carry so many artifacts. Dragging them along would only be a burden in his escape. He took a deep breath, shifted his gaze away from the artifacts on the ground, and used the scepter as a crutch to support his body, moving step by step toward the gap in the sky. Meanwhile, in the mist, in the endless silence, two deities stood on the clouds, looking down at the moving king turtle below, their brows furrowing deeper. How long has it been since they went in? Number 04 asked. It's been over 3 days and still no sign of them coming out. Number 03 shook his head. The mark should have been triggered. It seems they failed after all. What do we do next? This king's treasury is more troublesome than we imagined. However, we've worked hard to find it, we can't just give up. Number 03 pondered for a moment. Let's find an opportunity to gather another batch of agents to try again. Just as they were about to leave, a muffled boom suddenly came from the turtle's shell. Number 03 immediately stopped. What was that sound? Number 04 looked at the turtle's shell in confusion. Is it the king's treasury? Joy appeared in number 03's eyes. Could they have succeeded? The turtle's shell contained the king's treasury. Since there was a disturbance from there, it naturally meant something had happened in the king's treasury. But 3 days had passed, those agents should all be dead by now.